Can we hear online now?
Yes.
Great. All right.
I turned that mic off. I put the wireless. Is there a reason why that mic is not picking
No, it should work just fine, but they're hearing you now?
Yep, sounds like it.
Okay, go ahead. I'm just gonna adjust the volume if I need
Okay.
to.
All right. For those of you online, I just mentioned that we have lots of pollinators here in Kansas that I wanted to focus on more this month, and that we're going to mostly focus on bees because those are a large part of the pollination that happens in Kansas. And the bumblebees specifically are at the top of our concern list for the scientists that study bees in Kansas. We talked about this last month, but there's been a massive decline in insects numbers in general across the world, but especially here in the US, our bees are at risk. And they are super important for the pollination of lots of our produce here. Okay, so we talked about all of that last month. So here are just some actionable things that you all can do. I'm just gonna run through a couple of really easy things to think about as you're going through your normal lives in the next year. And again, I'm gonna share these slides at the end because I have resources listed under all of this in the notes that you can look at later. Okay, so for lawn maintenance, one of the things that they're saying will help our pollinators is just to mow your lawn less often, because a lot of our native bees actually will nest in the soil, and every time you mow your lawn, you're risking disturbing that process. So if you even just decrease your amount that you mow your lawn by a couple of times a month, then that can give some time for more reproduction for our pollinators. Also, if you are able to, if you just don't rake your leaves in the fall, or if you have a portion of your leaves or in your yard that you don't rake, then that can be helpful because again, that's giving cover for our native insects. And then similarly, if you have native plants in your garden that will leave sticks or dead plants at the end of the season, if you just leave those instead of trimming them back, then our bees will actually use those to nest. Another thing that I found a lot is that if people are able to contribute to community science, because there's a lot of difficulty in getting data about our native pollinators because people are looking at the birds and talking about the birds, so it's easier to track those numbers. but they don't necessarily do the same thing for our insects. And so it's hard for scientists to like get data to actually do the research that they need to. So these are just some apps that I found. iNaturalist is actually the one that I use. I like it because you can kind of like take pictures and say like, this is what I think it is and post it. And then you can have people who actually like know these things, look at your pictures and say, I agree, or actually I think it's this. And after it gets validated, those numbers are actually like put into a database for scientists to use. I haven't, yeah.
There was a rain last week on iNaturalist.
Really?
Something, and they did the research when they put it on iNaturalist, and no one had ever found it before. And they found it was a whole new genus, not just a species, but a whole new genus.
That's so cool. Wow. Do you know where that was?
It was in a desert, I think in California. And interestingly, that desert landscape is changing with just the changes that we're making. So the fear is that it's only found in that specific desert area, and that will eventually, the population might dwindle because of the landscape change, but it all came from iNaturalist.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, so iNaturalist, I didn't even know about that, but I just use it because I'm like, oh, what is this flower? And I'll post it on there, or sometimes if I see an insect. So I like that one. Seek is another option. It's made by iNaturalist, but it's a little bit more like user-friendly, I think. And then Bee Machine is one I hadn't heard of before, but I found it whenever I was doing this research. It's actually a Kansas scientist that created it, and it uses AI to like help you identify bees. And it's specific to native pollinators and bees that are, I guess not just the native bees, but, and he uses it for his research and like posts it for other scientists. And then again, I have links to a whole lot of more options. Okay, and one of the most important things that we can do is just educating ourselves. These are some sources that I found super helpful. The Xerces Society and Pollinator Partnership have so many like educational sources that I used actually to prepare this. They have like lesson plans for teachers and stuff. It's very, very cool. The Heartland Conservation Alliance is specific to like this area, and they do a lot of work in conservation in this area. And then Up From Dust is a newer podcast that's actually produced from Kansas, and it's specifically about like our Kansas, and I think they branch into like Missouri and Oklahoma a bit too, but kind of what we need to think about here right now. And again, so many more links. Okay, and then also if you can donate, and that doesn't just mean money. These organizations can really benefit from just like, if you have time to volunteer, or even if you are able to like their Instagram page and just give them some views and give them some like attention so that their word can get out there, even that can help, and like donate your time. You're okay. Great, so these are just a couple of things around in this area. BKC was here last week. Juniper Gardens works with BKC. The Heartland Conservation Alliance we talked about earlier. And then the Martha Lafitte Nature Sanctuary is just an example of like a local nature sanctuary that you can like donate time or money to and help super locally. Okay, this is something new that I've been seeing where people have been doing like pollinator watering stations. And from what I've found, it seems like it's actually super helpful. Bees specifically use water for like cooling themselves off, for like thinning the honey, because you know how like honey will crystallize? Well, that can happen inside them after they eat it. And so the water is like preventing that from happening. And especially like in our urban areas, it's really hard for them to access water sometimes. The thing with this though is if you are going to choose to like have a pollinator watering station, it is so important to like replace the water frequently. They recommend at least every 3 days. That'll keep you from having like mosquitoes using the water, because they need longer than that to like reproduce. And also it'll help there not be like pests and infections that are going to actually spread to the bees and pollinators that use it. Okay, and then if you're someone who gardens, there's, again, I have a list of different sources that you can use to kind of find plants that you can use in your gardens. But a couple of things to think about is whatever you're planting, if you can find something, seeds or plants that haven't been pre-treated with pesticides, because a lot of our plants actually have been. A lot of the ones that you're getting in like bigger chain stores have been like systemically treated with pesticides. So even if you're not applying pesticides, you can be bringing pesticides into your garden. So that's something to look for. A lot of times you have to like look on the ingredients because they're not gonna necessarily say, hey, this has been treated. Another thing is just to think about adding native flowers to your garden if you're able. Having a wide variety that are like drought tolerant is super helpful because with our like changing climates, if it's going to be without rain for a little while or anything like that, then having the drought tolerant will like make sure that there's still those resources for our pollinators. And also, we'll talk about this again in a couple of slides, but just having a wide variety to where like there are blooms in the garden throughout the year. So like if you have something that blooms early and have something that blooms late, so that bees that are out throughout the whole season are able to access. These are just a list of a couple that are really good for bumblebees. And then this is in Kansas City, a chart of when the flowers bloom. So you can, again, like choose from this list and have something that covers all season. And then these are some plants that have like hollow stems, which is super useful for our native bees to nest in. And so I wanted to show you kind of like what our solitary bees are actually doing. So there are some bees that will use like dirt and some that will use something similar to like what we're gonna make. But either way, they go into like these holes, okay? And they lay an egg and they have a whole pollinator pellet of like pollen and some nectar. So that big yellow thing is actually pollen, that's not the egg. So that whenever the eggs hatch, the larva can eat its way through that pellet and then it'll pupate. So this is similar to like our chrysalis with the butterflies. And in the next year, they hatch as an adult. So after the adult lays an egg, they're going to mud over the top of that cover. Okay, so some insects will use mud, some will use like leaf, spit, stuff like that. It just varies by the species. So in our homes that we're gonna build today, this is gonna be kind of similar to what it looks like. So on this, you can see these are mason bees. And you can see some of these tubes that are like mudded over and closed up. So that means that they have like eggs in there. There are some you can kind of see in the background. I don't know if I'm gonna show, but there's some kind of up in the background where you can see a hole in that mud. So that means that it's been emerged, right? So it's hatched, it's eaten its way through, and now an adult has emerged from there. And that'll be important whenever we look at like how to care for your bee home. Okay, so what we're gonna do today, and I think is a super cute idea, is just building a bee home. And so these are basically supplying a hollow source for our native bees to lay their eggs in. And so I have a couple of slides here that you can read through afterwards just about like what it is, what it's doing. The one thing that I want to point out here is like we don't really have to worry about stings as much as people are concerned about. A lot of our native bees don't actually sting at all. And if they do, it's just the females or just the males. And again, it's like reproductively negative for them to sting because they die. So they do everything they can not to do that. So this isn't something that needs to be as much of a concern as I think sometimes it is. Okay, so here are just some examples of people that have done bee houses, but this mug is what we're gonna do today. There's a couple of things I wanna talk about with this picture though. The way that they have it hung up is actually a little bit dangerous because the way that they have it is it's gonna swing, right? And we want it to be more stable. So whenever I hang mine up, I'm gonna put it up against a post and that'll just keep it from like swinging in the wind. Another thing is that anything that we can do to keep this like flat instead of pointed upwards to where rain doesn't catch in it is good. And if you can keep it under a cover, like mine's going under a porch, so that if there's rain, it'll kind of keep those reeds dry. And so there's lots of different ways to do this though, and I have some links in there to look at other options. Okay, so whenever you take your bee home back to your house and are looking for a place to put it, a couple of things to think about is, again, you don't want it swinging. If you can orient it to where the front, those openings of the tubes are facing like south or southeast, to where they're getting lots of morning sun, that's like what they like the best. Also, you want to have it like above the ground. Eye level or above is nice. That's just going to help protect from like predators. Okay, some more tips for if you're looking for things in the future. Okay, and then this is links back to these slides, our site that we have, and then if you are here and want to get our bookmarks, those have some native flowers in them, and this is an instruction to plant them. Okay, so unless there's any questions online or in person about this, then I'm gonna walk through and talk about how to do that real quick. Okay. Do we have any questions online? Okay. So, let me grab. I'm gonna bring this back up here so they can see online too. Okay, so this is the one that I'm working on right now. Basically, this is so simple, just getting a mug, and then we're gonna have reeds. You want a variety of different reeds. I have some bamboo, some cardboard, and some paper. That way they can kind of select what they'd like to use. And you can have more variety in the species that you're housing that way. And we're gonna tightly pack them in here. And we're gonna cut them to be just like an inch or so shorter than the lip of the cup, okay? And I have some twine back there if you want to use twine to like have an alternative hanging, so you don't have to hang it directly from the handle. And I have like the little things that I cut off. I'm gonna stick in there too, if you have like an oddly shaped mug like this one is. Trying to think if there's anything else to say about this. Oh, so one thing, it's all on the slides also, but whenever they get mudded over, okay, that means that there's an egg in there, right? And so we're gonna do whatever we can not to disturb those. Okay, there are some people who keep mason bees or native bees that will actually take them out and like refrigerate them. That's an option. I've seen some arguments about whether or not that's helpful or not. One thing that you can do is just take the entire thing in the winter and just put it in a shed. If it's not like a heated shed or anything, if you want to protect it from the environment, but that way it's still getting like the correct temperatures. I'm just gonna leave mine out. I've seen, again, some arguments about whether or not that's the best thing to do. I don't think anybody knows for sure. But in the next spring, whenever they're emerging, okay, so you'll see the mudded over things that'll have a hole in it, right? So they've come out. You're going to want to replace and clean out these tubes. Again, this is so that we're not spreading diseases to the next ones. Any questions about that? Yeah. So I've seen some people, like for the bamboo ones, I've seen some people just use like one of those like straw cleaners and just stick it through. If you're going to use like water or anything like that, just make sure it's completely dry before you put it back out. I've seen people use like bleach solutions to help clean any like viruses or anything like that, bacteria. But the ones that you're not like throwing away, because like these paper ones, you can probably just throw away and replace with paper straws or something like that. But the ones that you're not throwing away, like the bamboo, those will need to be like completely replaced after like 3 years or so. Just again, trying to keep our bees healthy. Yeah.
Are there any special steps that you need to take to remove the thing or anything?
So the only thing that I've seen is like whenever they're like nesting in there, they can actually withstand quite a bit. Just as much as you can do not to like keep them in like a warm area for too long. So like if you're driving for a ways, if you can put it in your trunk or whatever, and then just put it back out in the like native environment whenever you can. If you're moving to like a different climate, I'm not totally sure about that, but they can travel pretty well. So just as much as you can do to like keep it natural to what they're used to. Yeah.
Where do we get the replacement bamboo?
So if you want more bamboo tubes, there's a lot of different places to get them. These I just ordered online, like craft stores like Joann's or Michael's have them. The one thing that you want to make sure to look for is that they're not like treated bamboo. And then the paper ones, I just like searched mason bee tubes and found these. You can just use like paper straws. I've seen that too. Anything else?
So we're gonna put them out now,
Mhm.
right now.
Yes. Yep. And then eventually, hopefully you'll see like some of them get mudded over and you can basically just kind of leave it alone. The only thing is that if you look at it and notice that there's one that's been mudded over and has a hole and some things come out, then you just want to make sure you clean that out. It's the only thing.
And which bees will you be?
So lots of different bees. The like mason bees is what I see most commonly, but also, let's see if I can go back.
It's okay.
Yeah, and on the slides, there's like more information about these also, but what's there? So our bumblebees don't really use these so much, but the leafcutter bees will. Those will be the ones that like the mud will look a little bit less mud-like and will look a little bit more green because they're just using like plant material to mud it over. I'm not actually sure about whether the sweat bees use this or not. And longhorn bees, some of the species will use like hollow things like this, but some of the species will tunnel in the ground. So it's a variety. Yeah.
For this session for evaluation.
Okay.
Should I email that to you maybe, and then is your email?
No, I'm logged in under Barb's account, but are you able to like, okay, yes, I think I could do that. And I'm gonna stop sharing and just let me know if you need access to those QR codes again or anything. And I have them in the back of the room also. So do you have access to everybody's email for? Okay, yeah, then I can send it out to the people on there for sure. And I think it'll be on our, yes, it'll be on our site also.
Would you be the middle?
Yes, and those are, our site QR code is in the bottom of the emails that I sent, and then it's also back there. Yes, those have some native flowers and some herbs and stuff.
When
Exciting.
should we, I see your directions, when should we?
I'm not sure. I believe like early spring would make sense, but I didn't actually notice if it said anything about that. But yes, instructions are in the back, so it might say. And feel free to grab materials and go with that. And I'll see if I can get that survey up. Yeah. On the screen, there's a QR code if you want to fill that out to evaluate. Oh, there we go. Okay, and then feel free to like email me if you have any questions about any of this. So what I'm gonna do with mine is I'm gonna put twine and hang it on a nail right up against a post. I've seen that some people did that and then had like twine wrapped around it to where it's like fastened over it onto the post. But generally, like instead of just hanging it, you're just gonna wanna have something kind of behind it. Yeah.
Shelley, are you all done? Because I can log out from here. Can't hear you if you all are speaking.